welcome to my channel, welcome to my sewing studio. Today I need a comfort project. I really feel like making something just for the sake of it, making something that brings me joy. I quite often create in this way when I just have the need to start something new and something that brings me a lot of joy. So that's what this video is about. I'm going to use my old 95-year-old hand crank sewing machine. You might have just seen the treadle. That's a new addition to my sewing room and I haven't got the hang of it yet, but this 95-year-old Singer hand crank machine is what I'm going to use today. And I've been digging through my Liberty and picked out some prints that just really speak to me, things I haven't used before, and I'm also going to mix them with my vintage linens that I've been collecting. And this vintage embroidery has inspired the entire quilt. I'm going to use this as a centerpiece. This Georgian couple in the garden really speaks to me. It screams Bridgerton to me, especially as there is a beehive and some bees there as well. And I'm going to use this as the center, the focal point of the quilt. And really today I am just making it up as I go along. I'm just choosing fabrics, and I'm going to create a bit of a frame quilt, so I'm going to have this in the center and then build outwards with different Liberty fabrics and vintage linens and just see how far I get today. It will be a really simple quilt because there are a few challenges here. I'm working with a mixture of fabrics, some of them are quite old, there's a bit of stretch, not everything's on grain, so things might just get a bit warped, so I'm just keeping it as simple as possible. I'm also working with fabrics that I've got embroidery on, and when I'm using my new fabrics, the Liberty ones, I don't have huge amounts of them, so I'm just working in a bit of a jigsaw way really to piece things together. Now, one thing I learned from my previous video about my old sewing machine was that they really like straight wound threads, so I found a set of Silco threads and I've put them in the table part of the treadle, but these are what I'm going to use today. I have a whole array of lovely colours and I'm excited to try this one out, which is Pale Rose. I really don't know how the thread is going to behave because they are quite old, so that's another one of the challenges that's in the mix here. We've got a 95-year-old sewing machine, vintage linens, vintage thread. What could go wrong? So the more I use this machine, the easier it gets. I've really got to grips with threading up the bobbin now and threading the machine. I'm doing a better job of it than I was in my previous video about this machine. It does get easier the more you practice, that's for sure. But I'm interested to know how this project's going to go. Am I going to get a bit tired of turning the handle? Am I going to wish that I could speed it up with an electric machine? I don't know. So first of all, I'm just adding a really thin border around the central piece just to frame it really nicely, and I chose a pink Liberty print just to coordinate with the colours that are in the embroidery. When I work with this machine, the first thing that strikes me is just how relaxing it is. I think I initially thought I would get really frustrated by it, but actually the slow pace just fits with me. It's how I am, it's how I work. I just go at a slower pace and I really enjoy it. And I have to say that it just stitches really beautifully, this machine, and it does make you feel more in control than when you've got an electric machine, because literally the moment you stop turning the handle, it stops sewing. So yeah, I was really pleased with the results and how the stitches were. So I'm putting these borders on in the most simple of ways. I'm just stitching a border on and then trimming it down to match the length of the piece that I attached it to, and I'm just working in this way all the way around. I've been adding the top and then the bottom and then doing the sides, but I think I did switch it up on one of the other rounds later on in the video in which I did the sides and then added the top. It doesn't really matter to me. There's nothing about this quilt is going to be perfect, that is for sure, because there are so many variables. About the 1/4 inch seam as well, I did think about putting some tape onto the machine to measure the 1/4 inch seam, but when I actually measured from the needle to the edge of the foot gave me a scant 1/4 inch, and it turned out quite accurate, to be honest, so I didn't need to measure and put any tape down after all. I really love the colours in the embroidery, and I think that the Liberty prints just match really well with it. Well, new day, a rainy day, and carrying on with the project. So today I'm adding on some wider off-white borders in just a Tilda fabric. This is a new fabric. And I did think that running out of bobbin thread, because you do feel like you're always playing chicken with the thread with this machine because you don't know how much is in there. But I did think that running out of thread was going to be annoying, but actually I quite like the stopping and the threading, and yeah, I didn't find it frustrating or tiresome at all. And the more I do it, the better I get, and I was really pleased with how this bobbin was winding nice and evenly. They get better and better as I go along. Using a machine like this really is all about the process, and if you are having a bad day or have got some worries, focusing on using something like this that you're not used to is a great way to get your mind off things. I really did find that. But yes, it is such a process, and one to really take your time with. It forces you to slow down because it's not a fast machine. You're doing everything yourself, and I find that really good. I find it really calming, quite therapeutic, and yeah, just quite methodical. It gives me the same feelings that hand sewing does, really, and I don't get that when I use an electric machine. I never have. But I really do get that with this machine. It's totally different, and I didn't think it would be, and yeah, I really love it for what it is. The more I use it, the more I think that I don't know if I will go back to modern machines. I honestly do think that at this stage. Maybe I'm a bit naive, but I am enjoying it so much. So if you do have access to one, I do recommend giving it a go. Getting to grips with it. The learning curve is not steep at all because they're so simple, and yeah. So I am now adding some borders to it in one of my favourite Liberty prints. I absolutely love this one. I can't remember what it's called. I love the colours in this print as well, and I think it just ties in perfectly with the rest of the quilt. So you might be thinking those big white borders look rather plain. Well, fear not. I am planning to add some English paper piecing. I'm going to applique it on at a later date. So I'll make another video showing that because there are 2 places in this quilt I'm going to add some EPP motifs. But for now, I'm just looking through my fabrics trying to decide where to go next. I really like the embroidered tablecloths with the flowers on, and I feel like now I've added a few rounds of new fabrics, it might be good to try and incorporate those, but the scary part is cutting into them. I really want to try and save as much of the embroidery as possible, so I laid it out on my cutting table, and you can see that luck would have it that the embroidery is about 1 inch bigger than my piece on either side. So if I cut a row of it, then it will fit perfectly. And because it's repeated on the tablecloth, I can cut 2 rows to be exactly the same and put one on the top and one on the bottom. It was scary cutting this, and there was a bit of a twist in the fabric. It did feel like it had stretched out over time, but I did my best to cut them both in exactly the same place. I got it not quite perfect, but as close as possible because I wanted it to be symmetrical. So I lined it up so that the two yellow flowers in the centre, those yellow daisies, were in the centre of the entire quilt, and that way it would look symmetrical, even though it isn't perfectly symmetrical. It's as close as possible. When I sew strips like this and I want to line up the central points, I start sewing in the center. So I started sewing at those yellow flowers, sewed all the way down, then I flipped the whole piece over and sewed it from the center to the other end, and that way you don't get any shift, and if you do, it's not going to affect the central point that you want to line up. So that's just the way I do it. So I was really pleased with how the bottom one turned out, but slightly nervous for doing the top to be the same. But I pinned it in the centre and repeated the process, and it worked really well. I was really fortunate. I think that it looks as near to symmetrical as possible, really. Wasn't enough of that particular tablecloth to do the sides the same, so what I decided to do was use this bold print that I've been wanting to use for so long. I cut 4 roses. I couldn't cut them all exactly the same, there wasn't enough repetitions on the fabric, it wasn't big enough, but I cut them as closely as possible, and then I added the lilac Liberty print in between and added them to the sides, and I think now I have got it as wide as I want it to be. I'm going to add some EPP motifs to the lilac sections as well, so it's going to be on the off-white and also on those lilac panels, and I'll do another video because today's video is just about piecing this part together. But this is as wide as I want it to be. I'm going to add that applique that I mentioned, and then I'm going to piece a top and a bottom to it, and then I'm going to hand quilt it. So when I do those parts, I will be sure to show you. It might not be the next video, but it will be soon. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please think about doing that because it would be lovely to have you follow along here for more sewing adventures. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.